Is that nail polish you're wearing?
Yeah, it's kind of glittery. I don't know. Emerson told me I needed some flair.
You need a lot of flair in your life, I suppose.
Wow.
But
wow, that cut deep, Kyle.
Is that going to ruin your hands? Or isn't that going to ruin, I don't know, the melanin? What do they call that in your fingernails?
Yes, non-white people have melanin in their skin. Should we keep that in?
Boy.
Jesus.
Yeah, keep going.
I keep my hands busy. Nothing worse than idling them.
I don't know. I have an automatic.
In his own garage, Kyle has built a machine, cobbled together with parts found in his friend's church basement and a dumpster behind the local Dairy Queen. This monstrosity is now alive and evil. Kyle has convinced his friend Dave to help stop the apocalypse by reviewing films the machine picks. The ultimate purpose is still unknown, and Kyle could have probably done this himself, but he's not being dragged to hell alone. This is Kyle and Dave versus the machine.
Welcome to Kyle and Dave versus the Machine. My name is Kyle.
Hello, I'm David.
And I'm the machine.
This is a podcast where a sentient machine forces us to watch movies in order to prevent it from initiating the apocalypse. Although we tend to talk about the idea of the movie rather than the movie itself. Today, we get to watch Idle Hands.
I came all the way over here. You said you was holding.
I didn't say what I was holding.
Anton Tobias never had much on his mind.
Don't you think you should have like a goal?
My dream life would be to lie around all day in bed and watch TV while some hot broad delivers me food.
And he always had time on his hands.
4 bodies have been discovered and the killer is still at large.
Until one of them
What's happening to me?
got a mind of its own.
Oh boy, Dave, what is your history with Idle Hands?
I don't have one. All I know is that this movie's...
You're going to get one here pretty soon.
Yeah, all I know is this movie's going to suck. I know it's hard to be so biased.
Prejudge.
I think it's Devon Sawa. Well,
Yeah.
you know what's embarrassing, Kyle, is that name actually popped into my head. That just shows you that I have not done enough with my life. And then outside of that, I think it's a horror movie, and I kind of just don't want to watch it.
Well, thank you for your service for preventing the apocalypse. I knew of this movie, but very generally. I'd heard the name, didn't really know what it was about other than it having a hand in it, of course,
Oh,
like
God.
Let's
not do that.
murderous hand. That's kind of about it. So why the movie? Why the movie? Why
the movie exists?
yeah, that is probably a good question to ask. But why the machine asked us to review this movie, I'm not sure.
Your suffering brings me pleasure.
Let's just get this out of the way. Let's go and watch this movie. We'll go thank some sponsors, and then when we return, we'll be talking about Idle Hands.
I blame you personally for this, Kyle.
Hi there, everyone. I'm sure you are so eager to get back to listen about Idle Hands, but it's time to thank a few of our sponsors here this week. As always, Kyle and Dave versus the Machine is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. The Alberta Podcast Network promotes and supports Alberta-made podcasts and connects their audiences with Alberta-based businesses and organizations. I see all you bakers out there. You have the breads, you have the cookies, the creme brules, all that stuff. That requires power. So what a great serendipity that we have here today that our first sponsor is Park Power, a provider of electricity and natural gas in Alberta that offers low rates, awesome service, and profit sharing with local charities. In Alberta, you get to choose who to buy your energy from, and Park Power has low overhead, and chances are you'll save money if you switch. You can find out how much money you would save by visiting parkpower.ca and plugging your numbers into the Alberta Energy Savings Calculator. If you decide to switch, it's easy. Nothing changes about your service, only the price you pay. Learn more at parkpower.ca. This week, we're also sponsored by the Alberta Podcast Network. And I should just say right here that, and I'm sure Dave would agree with me on this as well, I have had nothing but respect for the people who help run the Alberta Podcast Network. They have been so gracious and so nice through this entire pandemic that the entire world is facing, understanding about taking some time to do some paperwork, about if we have to shuffle around some shows, and they've been nothing but supportive. So I just want to give a huge shout out to Karen and Fonda specifically, but all the great people that help this thing run. So let's listen to one of our other great shows.
Hello and welcome to That's a Thing, a sometimes belated, already outdated guide to your teens, tweens, and everything under 20. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Karen. Every month we have a conversation across the generation gap about media, pop culture, society, the internet, that kind of thing.
Karen is my mom, and she's old. I am her daughter, and I am young. Together we are one human being, here to share with you.
Sometimes we bring in another human being who's Elizabeth's brother, John, to do a deep dive into memes and stuff like that.
Hi.
Thank you, John. We were named the Outstanding Kids and Family Series at the 2020 Canadian Podcast Awards, so we have that going for us.
Yes, and we will brag about it until the day the podcast ends, because I am petty.
You can find That's a Thing in the podcatcher of your choice. That is That's a Thing, ! You can also find us at albertapodcastnetwork.com. Is that everything?
I think that's it.
Thanks, sweetheart.
Bye.
Okay, well, Dave,
Holy shit.
you were right to blame me.
Holy shit.
You were right to blame me. Let's speed through this because I have a feeling that we don't have a lot to say about this movie.
This is probably going to be the shortest episode we've ever recorded, frankly.
Sure. Okay, Idle Hands was released April 30th, 1999. Sorry, let me just push this button here. Idle Hands was released April 30th, 1999. The other major release that day was Entrapment, starring Sean Connery and Catherine Zeta-Jones.
How are we not watching that? That's the Catherine Zeta-Jones crawling under the laser movie.
Yeah. There was also not very highly regarded. It's not very well liked. But
dude,
written by Ronald Bass and William Broyles Jr., directed by Mike Newell. Currently, this film is rated 6.2 on IMDb.
What?
6.2 on IMDb.
What?
31 on Metacritic.
Closer.
15% on Rotten Tomatoes by the critics and 58% by the users of Rotten Tomatoes.
Users of Rotten Tomatoes should all burn in hell.
It is available on DVD or Blu-ray. How it got a Blu-ray release, I'm not quite sure, but it is. You can rent or buy it on iTunes and also on YouTube or Google Play Movies. The budget for this movie was $25 million.
Oh my God.
Somehow. So an actor must have gotten a lot. Maybe it was the special effects. It's probably the special effects with the hands and stuff. But it opened to $1.8 million, would domestically get up to $4 million. So there was no international release, meaning it stayed at $4 million, which is about $6 million after inflation. So this bombed pretty badly.
$4 more million
office
than it should ever have earned.
The plot description from IMDb is: a teenage slacker's right hand becomes possessed with murderous intent. It stars Devon Sawa as Anton Tobias, Jessica Alba as Molly, Seth Green as Mick, and then Eldon Henson as Peanut. Let's talk about Eldon Henson first. He was born August 30th, 1977. He started acting at 8 years old by appearing in an episode of Amazing Stories as Freckle-Faced Boy. His film debut would come 2 years later when he was a voice in the crowd during Jaws: The Revenge. From there, he would be in Turner and Hooch before being cast as Fulton Reed in the Mighty Duck franchise.
Oh, that's why he looks so familiar.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, we've already actually seen him during this podcast, as he was very briefly seen in She's All That.
Oh, interesting.
He's continued working, being in such things as Castaway, Under the Tuscan Sun, and Deja Vu. Also, he was in Deja Vu.
Oh.
For comic book fans, he's probably most recognizable as being Foggy Nelson in the Daredevil Netflix series. He was in all 38 episodes. Currently, that is his last credit with no upcoming projects. Seth Green. Seth Green was born February 8th, 1974. He also started acting as a child. His first film role was in the 1984 film The Hotel New Hampshire. From there, he would spend a lot of time guesting on TV shows. His first big film was the Christian Slater starring movie Pump Up the Volume in 1990.
Awesome.
And then he was in the It miniseries in that same year. For Kyle, his most important role was in the TV show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where he portrayed Oz for a couple of seasons. But he would break out by being Scott Evil in Austin Powers in 1997. From there, he would go on to be in such things as Josie and the Pussycats, Rat Race, and this podcast's favorite film, apparently, Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed.
I actually like Rat Race a lot.
I remember liking it too, although I'm a big fan of the style of that movie. For many people, his most recognizable roles will be his voice acting in Family Guy as Chris Griffin, and then on the show he created, Robot Chicken. In fact, he has been doing a bunch of voice work for the last decade. Up next is a film called Wednesdays, which currently has no plot description. All right, Dave, I'm sending you over some of these to read off yourself, so why don't you take it away from there?
Okay, let's see what this says here. Jessica Alba. I'm shaking my head. Born April 28th, 1981, her first role was a teenager in Camp Nowhere. She would continue guest starring on a bunch of TV shows, but in 1999, she not only appeared in this film, but also Never Been Kissed and Punks. She found larger success by being cast as the lead in the TV show Dark Angel, which had been developed by James Cameron. I like that it's developed by, I'm sure he has nothing to do with that show.
I think he had nothing else to do but coming up with an idea, but...
He's like, the Dark Angel, what is it about? Doesn't matter. You take it from here.
It has a Dark Angel.
It lasted 45, that's pretty big, 45 episodes. Since then, she has been in such films as Honey, Fantastic Four, and Little Fockers. Wasn't she famous for a dolphin show?
Your guess is as good as mine. I don't know.
In the last...
Was she in the reboot of Flipper?
No, I think... maybe I'm confusing with another actress of that era. In the last couple of years, she's been starring in the TV show LA's Finest as Detective Nancy McKenna with a Scottish last name. Sure, right. Yeah, whatever.
Why not?
Yeah, it's the future where everything's neutral. We can have whatever name we want. Alba was raised as a...
Hey, Jean-Luc Picard is acted by a Scottish man, so why not?
Well, yes, but Patrick Stewart is one of the greats. Alba was raised as a Catholic, but became disillusioned after constantly being judged on her appearance. She's quoted as saying, "Older men would hit on me, and my youth pastor said it was because I was wearing provocative clothing when I wasn't. It just made me feel like if I was in any way desirable to the opposite sex, that it was my fault, and it made me ashamed of my body and being a woman." Can I just be a dick here and just say,
yeah.
Then she made a career out of not wearing clothes.
Is that true, though? I don't know if that's true.
Is it not true, Kyle? Can we name a movie or a show that she's been in where she's not in a bikini or a leather bra top or sticking her butt out doing something?
I would say, though, that just wearing a bikini does not mean that you should be hit on by men.
Oh, no, I'm not going that way. It's just She made a career out of playing these roles that she's stating made her upset with society. There's an irony, I think, there. Anyways, she has since spoken up about not only these practices, but the church's stance on homosexuality. Currently, she has no upcoming projects. I don't know, maybe that makes me sound like a bad guy, but I think it's a little hypocritical. Devon Sawa, the great... No, I'm just being a dick. Devon Sawa, born September 7th, 1978. Once again, he was a child actor. His first role...
I think that's actually interesting that all four of these people were child actors who were basically the four main people.
It shows, Kyle. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
His first role being on a TV series called Unsub. Never heard of it. Kyle, I'm presuming this is for you. His most important role in his younger years was in Casper. That's the right amount of screen time he deserves.
Yeah, he's in it for a minute, 2 minutes maybe?
Yeah. A movie he still argues is good. Oh, that's a weird little bracket.
I really quite like Casper. So that's my hill to die on.
You just put that out there on the permanent record of the internet. Yeah. From there, he was in The Boys Club, Wild America, and SLC Punk. After Idle Hands, he would be in Final Destination, as well as starring in Eminem's Stand video. Since then, he's been working He's been a working actor going back and forth between TV and film. He had a bit of notoriety last year when he appeared in the film The Fanatic, which starred John Travolta but was written and directed by Fred Durst. Oh my God. Is he? I don't want to sound like a terrible... Is he still alive? Fred?
Yeah.
I thought he died. I think of a different singer of that era. Well, a lot of them passed away from drugs and addiction. But anyways, well, I guess Fred Durst's still alive. Yes, that Fred Durst. Look up clips online. This movie is fucking awful. The machine's swearing, Kyle.
Even I have some standards.
Okay, it broke the machine. It gave us this movie to watch,
Wow.
but it has something to say about The Fanatic, apparently.
I think we'll need to look at its algorithm. There's something off about this week.
Yeah. We'll tinker with it.
Next up is Death Rider in the House of Vampires. It currently has no plot description, but do you need on with a title? Oh, wow.
That was a misspelling on my part. It should be one.
You mean on the robots part? Okay, we'll skip
on the
that
robot
one.
side.
Yeah, this movie was written by...
But do you need one with that, Dave? Come on.
Well,
that is a great title.
Death Rider in the House of Vampires. I'm imagining that he'll be on a unicycle.
I'm hoping for more like a From Dusk Till Dawn type of feeling to it, but we'll see.
This movie, Idle Hands, was written by Terry Hughes Burton and Ron Milbauer. They're a writing team that began in 1995 with an episode of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Awesome. As of right now, Idle Hands is the only film they've ever written. Instead, they've stayed on television shows such as Johnny Zero, a couple of episodes of Supernatural, and The 100. Is that the Netflix show, The 100?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't watch that. Currently, they are working on a series called Warrior Nun. Can we just stop there? All right.
Keep going.
Plot description. A young woman wakes up in a morgue with inexplicable powers and gets caught in a battle between good and evil.
You're there opening day.
Probably starring Jessica Alba. Directed by Rodman Flender. Born June 9th, 1962. His first film was The Unborn in 1991. But his biggest success would have to be Leprechaun 2. And then an episode of Dawson's Creek. Wow, no wonder I loved this movie so much. After this movie, he would stick mostly...
Rodman Flender. Can we just pause on that name?
It's like something out of Futurama. After this movie, he would stick mostly to TV, but he had some highlights such as Ugly Betty, The Office, and an episode of 10 Things I Hate About You. The way this is written, it
comes full circle.
Well, the way this is written, it makes it seem like he had a critical role in Ugly Betty, The Office, and 10 Things I Hate About You.
He did not. It was just, he was a gun for hire.
Yeah, I'm assuming he was like a grip or something. He also directed the documentary Conan O'Brien Can't Stop, which is all about Conan's tour of the country after being fired from The Tonight Show. I have that bookmarked on Netflix, and I still won't press play on it. I like Conan too, but
it's actually not it's not a great documentary, but it's interesting to see the behind the scenes.
The last film he directed was Eat Brains Loves. Oh, for Christ's sake. It's described as a laugh-out-loud funny, surprisingly romantic, zombie road trip movie filled with heart and brains.
I feel like that was him coming up with that description, and then it got uploaded to IMDb.
He Wikipedia'd himself. That's
right.
All right, let's move on.
Let's rip off the Band-Aid, Dave. What did you think about this movie?
Awful. I remember looking at my metaphorical watch less than 30 minutes in, questioning why there was still an hour and fucking 10 minutes left in this piece of crap, and someone just punched me in the face already.
I got you beat on there. I think it was about 5 minutes in. I'm like, oh no, oh no, this is not just. It's not even like a good bad film. You know what I mean? Where it's like it's bad, but there's some fun to be had. It was straight up a bad movie from basically start to finish.
I was talking to my shrink, and he was telling me about the term shit sandwich and how you're supposed to, like, the idea is that you start like the loaf, like it's, you say something good, you give people the shitty news, and then you end with something good, right? There's no sandwich in this shit. It was hard to comprehend how this thing existed. The one thing I will say, by the end, frustratingly, I did finish watching this, as you know, since we just sat through it together. I suspect it was meant to be maybe satirical and comedic.
So this is what I'm going to basically be arguing, because I have a feeling that my rating, when we ultimately get to that, is going to be probably like a lot higher than yours. I mean, I'm not saying
it's easy to be
above.
higher than zero, but let's keep going.
I know. I'm just saying that I have the same thing, that if this was put into different hands that I think this could,
Heyo.
well, yeah, no pun intended. Yeah. I think this could work. I actually do think that there's a way that this setup could work, but I think that the script comes across as almost like a second draft. Like there needs to be some, I don't know, finagling or
rewriting,
shaping of this script a little bit more. I'll say more on that in a moment. And I think we need a better director to really lean in onto like those funny moments, because I think they're there. They just don't land very well. It actually reminds me, have you ever watched Aliens 4, the fourth Aliens film?
Resurrect? Okay. No, it's Resurrection.
I think Resurrection. Yeah, I think it's Resurrection.
Where they rebuild her as a clone. Yes, Winona Ryder.
Which is not good.
Yeah,
right. It's not a good movie.
She catches the basketball. Yeah.
Well, she actually did. That was an in-shot thing that she got to do.
Sigourney, she's Sigourney Weaver.
Anyways, I don't know if you know the history of that movie, but it was written by Joss Whedon of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer fame and other stuff. And the director they got on was this French guy who had made some great films before that, was brought into Hollywood to direct this movie. But because he didn't speak English very well, he didn't get that certain scenes were supposed to be funny. And so if you watch it with that context in mind, if you watch that film again, it's like, oh, this is supposed to be like a comedic beat, but they don't know that that's what's going on. And so it feels weird and awful and doesn't work. This is the same thing I feel about this movie. Is like, I can see it that there's something here that could work. It just doesn't. Like the people behind it are not making this come alive in the way that I think was intended.
Yeah, to your point, although I'm still going to hold firm on a 0 rating, in the setup when they go into the idea of a pot smoking, I mean, it's played so poorly, and Devon Sawa, I'm sorry this is so personal, but he should never have ever had a career in front of a screen. He's so fucking bad. But like, there was a trope, particularly in the end of the 90s, about what a pothead teenager looked like and did, and you know, and so when he crawls into the basement of his buddy, you know, that's kind of funny. Like this idea, like nobody wants to come over, but they actually live across the street from each other. So there's something. It's shit on, but there's something there. And then in the moment, for just a second, when I saw Seth Green and whatever his name is as the stoners, I thought, oh, maybe this will be a comedy. And then I don't know, Kyle. And then I just wanted to tear my eyeballs out.
Well, I think my fear is that this is going to turn into a discussion about like, oh, what this movie should have been,
we have
rather
to be careful
than
not
what
to
it
do
is.
That. Yeah.
But when I think to this, like there are films out there that are straddling this line between both being a horror film and a comedy at the same time.
Well,
right. So I'm thinking of the good examples of like An American Werewolf in London or like Shaun of the Dead. Those are my two like big examples I normally give. And I'm just wondering, like, why do those work and this doesn't? Like, can you think of why it doesn't work?
Well, I mean, Edgar Wright has talent, number one. The cast, and I think, at least with Shaun of the Dead, which is, you know, like, I think Hot Fuzz is my favorite of that series, but there's something about British, when they hit dry humor and sarcasm and sort of like understated things with great actors, and then you have the magic of having, at the time, an unknown Simon Pegg, who's fucking brilliant, and Nick, I can't remember his name, and he's amazing. He's kind of, unfortunately, fallen by the wayside. He's hilarious. So you have your two leads that can carry you through lampoon and comedy, and no matter how off the scale it gets, like, everybody in that movie plays, you know, gets what they're trying to do. And I find, like, even on TV, like the first season of Community or like Brooklyn, like all those shows that like that are ensemble casts, when you have that buy-in where everybody understands what, you know, like you said, where the humor is, what the script is trying to, even if it's ad-libbing, like what the character's supposed to do, then you can get away with so much ridiculousness. That is not the case with this movie. I mean, never mind how bad everything, and this is going to be so personal, but the moment Jessica Alba appeared on her so-called rebel scooter, that was when I checked my watch. I don't know if that was 30 minutes in, but I was like, I need to stop this, because it doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense. It's just not interesting.
Well, now I just wanted to pick up what you were talking about with Jessica Alba, because we mentioned how it was written by Terry Hughes Burton and Ron Milbauer. So I can't say for certain. So maybe I'm talking out of school. but Terry is spelled in the way that traditionally women spell Terry, and not in the male way. So what I'm saying is I'm so confused how this was written by a woman and having such a terribly written female character.
Do you actually think is Terry a woman? Or is it just spelled?
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know. I can't verify it one way or the other.
I'll refuse to believe it until we can get evidence.
Because what does the Jessica Alba character do in this movie?
Well, this is the thing. This thing about the trivia. She's literally there just to be in her underwear. Like, there's no value even to the story and this idea of needing a human. It feels like it was written after just to justify that she would have a speaking role in this film.
Well, not even that, but the justification for like her and Devon Sawa's like romance, I guess, in this movie.
Where did that come from?
Like, he comes off as such a weirdo creep, and like that's what's prompting her to want to like make out with them and be a boyfriend girlfriend situation. And like, there has to have been a way that this actually worked on a script level, because I do not get having you read this and be like, that'll work.
Well, how aggressive and pornographic is their first interchange or second interchange when he's knocking on the door? I mean, that's literally ripped out of like a 90s softcore porn movie, you know?
Yeah.
Whatever the roles are, like opening the door in your underwear, seeing this person, you know, it's basically a pizza box, and like inviting them inside, and all of a sudden, you know, like you're in a bedroom. It's offensive.
Dave, you can actually answer this for me, although you probably won't, but can you explain how the ham becomes possessed? Is that ever really explained in the movie?
No.
Because I was so confused by just that, about how he, I guess, killed both of his parents. We're led to believe that it was him that killed both of his parents, right? And kills a bunch of people around town without knowing he had killed all these people.
Like, is it supposed to be because he's so high? I mean, they do show that one guy that's in jail with the shriveled zombie hand, which didn't make much sense. Even Vivica Fox's like vampire killer, Van Helsing type of thing.
Yeah.
Just like none of it works.
No, but I think that, again, those are the elements I think could have worked if we had fleshed these things out a little bit.
How awful was the death metal rocker? Oh, fuck's
well,
sake.
yes, like the whole thing is bad. But I mean, it's like having this ancient evil. It possesses only a body part. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, what is that movie with Steve Martin and Lily Tomlin in it? I think, is it Trading Places? Something where basically half of his body is actually Lily Tomlin and half of his body is Steve Martin.
Yeah.
And that is interesting because it's like, yeah, half of the body is doing one thing and half the body is trying to do the other thing. You have some interesting physical comedy and tension that you can have there. So like, that's cool. Like, imagine like only a part of your body has turned evil and is trying to kill you. That concept is cool. Having like this like rogue person who dresses up as like nuns in different costumes and is like coming out here to like kill it. Cool. That brings them some more dramatic tension. But she's so ineffective and doesn't do anything in the movie anyways that I don't even know why she's even involved. Like, all these things is like, oh, that's cool, but it has nothing to do with anything. So why is it even in this movie?
I feel like there's a presumption maybe on your part that this was actually a script and not kind of pieced together as they were going along.
Maybe.
It has a sense where it's like a little bit like the stories I read about Iron Man. Like, there's maybe an original script, and as they're shooting, they're like, or in post-production, they're like, holy shit, this is even worse than what we get now. We either have to reshoot it or change the structure of how these things appear, because none of it makes sense. It's not. Yeah, it's hard to comprehend. I'm thinking back to the ratings that 58% of internet users who would identify themselves presumably on Rotten Tomatoes would give this higher than 5 out of 10 is such a signal that there's something fundamentally wrong with our society.
Is this a movie that's going to totally break you, Dave?
Oh my God. Is there anything salvageable for you in this? Like,
there's only one thing that I really wanted to bring up.
Right.
And I actually do think that the makeup effects are actually really great.
Fine.
And that's done by Stan Winston, who was like a big creature effects guy in both the 80s and 70s. And I think it does well. I think there's actually some really cool of those types of special effects shots in this movie that still hold up 21 years later, that I think they still look really great.
Sure. But for me, my rebuttal to that is that this is not the movie that created them. they're not unique to this movie, and that they were handled very well because they hired by chance, likely, because they clearly didn't know what they were doing, but just by happenstance, they got a real professional for one aspect of this movie.
I wonder what he felt like. I mean, obviously he got a paycheck and stuff like that, but at the same time, I wonder if he was like, oof, well,
it's money.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to think about, like, as I'm learning how fragmented the process of making a major motion picture is, whether like a great physical special effects person will understand the context of how it's going to be used in the wider, picture. For something like this looks like a throwaway project. The production and the shots for Seth Green's, like a bottle head, that might have been a day's work. Like this guy probably didn't even know what was. I mean, I would almost argue that, because I'm not a horror genre fan, that might be the experience of all horror movie making, is that there's going to be a lot of limited understanding, like, the use of music, like at the beginning cheap jump scares portions, like that's when you shoot that and it's like dead silent, unless they're doing method acting, they actually have an orchestral track to like scare the actors. Right. All of it's just garbage, like at the beginning when they do those like, you're going to jump. We're not, assassins with heightened ability. And then what? And then I leave the theater if I'd paid for it and asked for my money back. It's garbage.
Well, you don't get your money back from this, Dave. I'm so sorry. You don't even get your time back. Well, let's ask a couple of the questions that we normally ask on this show. Do you think this says anything about 1999? That this movie came out here? Like, what is this saying?
Well, I don't know if it says anything, but it has some tropes. I think they kind of come from the 80s. It's like the metalhead with the big pickup truck. That's not really a character that represents the 90s. That's a throwaway from sort of like 80s movies shtick.
I think that's a really great point. It does feel like it's trying to be an 80s movie, but not.
Yeah, because then the stoners are more 90s, like that whole teenage pothead world was much more of a 90s thing. I mean, drugs are a big thing, part of 80s cultures too, but generally in mass media, it's like cocaine and kind of like high life drug abuse. This idea of like kids sitting on their parents' couch, smoking a bong and lighting up incense, like that's very 90s. It's just done so cheaply, and not that you could do it in an expensive way, but it's such a throwaway piece. And I think, I don't know. I mean, the rest of it, it's anachronistic. I don't understand any part of it. Even like the vampire hunter showing up in like a silver line fucking camper or whatever that thing was. Is it intentional? Is it supposed to be this homage to 80s slasher flicks? Like the very attractive goth, like the kiss makeup girl showing her boobs as she's getting murdered. Like it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, true.
They bring in this woman with this annoying guy and they're making out in a car and they get murdered by a hand. Like why? Like it's at that point, I don't understand any of it. So
okay.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think we can answer this at the same time, but do you think this is still culturally relevant, Dave? No, I don't think so either.
Except as a point of reflection that it should never have been made. There's cultural relevance there that anyone associated with this thing should really take a hard look at themselves. I'm embarrassed that it... You know what's embarrassing, Kyle, is that this thing is still available. There are so many movies that have disappeared, right?
Yeah, you can't get anywhere. Yeah.
And they're invisible to the world. And you can actually fucking buy this to stream on iTunes. I mean, that actually says something. It's saying something. I don't want to know what it says about our society, but this is a movie that still exists.
Put this in perspective, just in some of the ones that we have actually watched here. You can buy this movie or you can rent it online. But cannot for Payback.
Right.
So
how is Payback not available? Right? Payback should be on streaming service. If Payback went on Netflix, it would go in that top, their new top 10 list that they're doing 100%. Right. As soon as even half-ass Mel Gibson fans realized that this thing existed, they would give it a watch and they'd be like, holy shit, like, it still has its own merits. As we discussed, this movie should be burned from historical records. Now I'm just getting mean, but I do believe in what I'm saying. So no, I don't think it has any cultural relevance. I don't think it should be rewatched. I don't think it says anything important.
We're done here.
All right, well, the machine is asking us to stop. So let's get to some of our trivia. Do you remember that amazing moment, Dave, when Anton, played by Devon Sawa, squirts dish soap in his mouth?
Yes.
Well, the dish soap that Anton squirts into his mouth after attempting to smoke nutmeg and oregano is real dish soap. Sawa came up with the gag on the spot. I think you might have more credence to this, like they were making it up as they went along.
The whole thing feels that. I don't know.
Yeah.
What an awful. Is there something of Devon Sawa's that you like?
Casper. That's really the only one I can think of. But again, he's not well, he does the voice of Casper too, so I guess he is in it for the entire movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's so unfair to.
I've never actually seen any of the Final Destination movies either. I don't know if those do anything.
Well, they can't be. I remember watching the first one, but I don't remember anything about it. And those movies, like this one, are not meant to be evaluated on the merit of their, thespial, acuity. I don't know. But he's just his too personal. He's kind of gross to look at. It's hard to watch him in this movie, right?
I had a crush on him growing up for a bit.
Like from magazine pictures or something? Or?
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Not from this movie though, for sure.
That's the thing I remember when he came out, was that he was going to be this, like teen heartthrob, like one of those manufactured teen magazine things. But watching this movie, like, it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch him play this thing, and he looks invested in it, and I don't know, dude. Like, he really puts it out there, and it's terrible to watch. It's frightening.
I mean, we mentioned this during our election episode, but of course Columbine happened in 1999. This film was actually delayed because the main character kills his parents and his two best friends, goes to his school. So it was delayed a few weeks after the Columbine massacre happened. I'm going to send you over some other trivia, Dave. You can read the rest.
Let's take a look here. Rodman Flender. If we keep repeating
it gets better every time I say it, yeah.
Rodman Flender got the job after two other directors dropped out. Dodged bullets there, guys. The United States DVD claims to include supplementary production notes, but there are none on the disc or printed inside the cover. Why would the machine know this?
I don't know. He does. They do.
What kind of supplementary production notes could there be?
Who cares? Who would buy the DVD
director's commentary
of Idle Hands and be like, I really want to know some more of the production notes that went into the making of this culturally relevant film from 1999 starring Devon Sawa.
When they're lifting the car up on the jack, are they really doing it? Are there hydraulics involved? I want to understand, like, who's in charge.
Is that a special effect? All right, Dave, what would you rate this movie?
0. Am I allowed to give it a 0 or am I not?
No, because Letterboxd does not allow us to put a 0, so 0.5 is the absolute lowest rating you can actually put into
0.5.
it. 0.5, okay. By the way, you can actually see our entire list by going to letterboxd.com/KDVSTM. KDVSTM is also all of our social media handles, meaning Twitter and Instagram. So here is the deal.
Oh, sorry, Kyle, you didn't publicly announce your rating of this garbage.
I sometimes just do it in my head. So be aware that there is a reason
no
about the rating I'm about
disclaimers.
to
Just
give
put
to
it out there, man. Just live it.
I am giving this a 1.5. So a 1.5 out of 5. It only gets that 0.5 because of, like I said, the makeup effects that I liked. And otherwise, it would be the one just like I gave to Message in a Bottle or 8mm. It's like, this is a movie I never want to see again. However, because of this, it is tied. All right, so 1.5 and then 0.5 is a 1 average, meaning that it's tied currently with 8mm. So do you think this is better or worse than 8mm?
Worse. Yeah.
I do agree as well. So, so entering our list, second from last, it is number 16 on our list of movies that we've watched here this year is Idle Hands.
Sorry, wait, what's the worst movie we've watched so far?
Oh, you have to know.
But
it's Message in a Bottle.
Sure, but what did Message in a Bottle get? 0.5?
It got a 0.75, rounded down to a 0.5.
I blame you, Kyle, personally for this. 1.5, eh? We're going to have a talk after we press stop on the recorder.
Okay, well, we'll do that. So let's see what the machine has in store for us next week. Push this button. Oh, well, we have to watch The Mummy. I remember hating this movie, Dave.
You're such a broken soul, Kyle. This movie, I mean, I don't know.
I remember it being on the level of this movie, like
wow.
this bad.
I mean, I haven't seen it in a long time, and I don't know if the special effects will hold up, but I think The Mummy is like a good movie, like a generational fun. Well, generation is a strong word, but it was a fun movie of that era, like a big one. I don't even know. Did it make? I think it made a lot of money.
Probably, which is always the sign of a great movie, that it made a lot of money.
Hey, it's a sign that something worked. Idle Hands demonstrates that $4 million is not a good reflection of quality.
Can your son do my nails?
To be honest, he chooses color. He's like a designer, and Helen is actually the manicurist. But Emerson's been rocking these kids nail polish blue sparkle stuff, but he's just graduated to the real things, and he recently had a pink and blue setup. It's something glorious.
Nah, we need to put some rouge on next.